Reinforcements are on the way for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll dive into that next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're going to talk about some trade rumors that are swirling. We're going to talk about the vibes that have changed in Dallas. But let's start with this, Landon. The Cowboys activated a bunch of players to the active roster this week. They opened some practice windows for some injured guys. It seems like we do this every year. We say that reinforcements are on the way, but honestly, it kind of feels like that for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I mean, certainly because the guys that we're talking about are a couple of high caliber guys and some serious role players. So, yeah, I do think that when we've been pointing towards the date where DeMarvion Overshown was going to arrive and save this defense, and I do think it's specifically for him, it seems a little bit unfair for that kind of expectation to be thrown on him. But I just think as the season has gone on, specifically for him, we'll talk about the others obviously as well, but I think specifically for him, it's been such a problem position for the Cowboys, not only just this season, but previous seasons. And then obviously has just seemingly been made worse this offseason and this season. And so as the leaves have started to change, we started to eyeball that kind of calendar with DeMarvion 0 kind of circled somewhere in the middle of November, right? Or hopefully early November. And really hoping that he's able to get back and kind of make an impact, even if it's maybe not too fair for the player himself.
I hope they don't rush him back, because I remember you and I doing the podcast after that Bengals game. I think it was a Sunday night football game, and the reports were that likely going to miss the entire 2025 season, if not all of it. We'll see what he looks like in 2026. So the fact that they could get him back sometime in November and likely in the earlier part of November is pretty wild. Now they've got a bye week coming up, but after the Arizona game, so that's Denver, Arizona bye week. Maybe we see him back in that Raiders game, but he's one of the guys that's going to start practicing. We'll see what his practice schedule looks like over the next couple of weeks. One player who was activated this week is Jonathan Mingo, who we have not seen at all this year after he suffered a knee injury. I believe it was I think it was early in preseason, if I remember correctly. Where does Mingo fit into this offense that's scoring 30-something points a game now?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? They made him active too. Like they actually IR'd the guy, so they clearly have plans for him. And if you remember correctly, the last time we saw him, he kind of had firm grip on that Jalen Tolbert spot, right? Like
I know.
Tolbert was really kind of struggling to keep up with the way that Mingo was really kind of advancing on his position. So, yeah, I mean, again, another guy coming off an injury, so we don't really know what to expect. And honestly, like he's had a nice little ramp up too, it feels like. So you wonder, where he is and like how close to 100% is he? Is he in game shape? A tough week to find out if he's in game shape, huh? To be playing at Mile High Stadium. But I think he's another guy that, you make part of the rotation. You give him some of Jalen Tolbert's snaps and see how he does. A bigger bodied guy who you feel like can do a little bit more with the ball with his hands once he catches the football. An interesting guy to kind of add to what is already an incredible offense.
Well, just a couple of weeks ago, the Cowboys were playing Ryan Flournoy and Jalen Cropper was getting snaps on offense. And now you're to the point with CeeDee Lamb back, with Kevontae Turpin back, and George Pickens, obviously. Those are your top three receivers. Does Ryan Flournoy become inactive on game days? He just had a 100-yard game. Was it 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago at this point? Like, how does this who ends up sitting on the bench when all these guys are healthy?
Yeah, I mean, you think it's like got to be two of Tolbert, Flournoy, and Mingo, right? Like two of those three that probably get called up, and the other one's inactive. You have to think.
Yeah. So I don't. Oh man, maybe it is Mingo. Maybe they just put Mingo on the active roster and they give him a couple more weeks to get in shape. But I could also see them wanting his size and athleticism on the outside. I'm sure we'll talk more about him as we get further along in the week. Another guy that had their practice window open was Savon Ravel, the Cowboys' third round pick from East Carolina. We saw him out on the practice field or out on the rehab field last week sporting a heavy knee brace. Now, I think some of the people that were at practice said that's usually a good indication that they're getting ready to return. And he's another guy that is expected to practice this week. I don't think he's going to play here against Denver. I got to assume he's kind of on that overshown timeline of like, let's get through the bye, look at that Raiders game, and maybe activate him then.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at. I mean, this is a guy that we haven't even seen at all, right? And you have to look at what we're asking him to do. He's a rookie coming from ECU. It's a very serious step up, and he's just kind of coming out of an injury situation, a recovery situation. So, yeah, they're gonna definitely slow play this situation as much as they possibly can. Even though obviously they need all the talent they can get at corner, I think it's smart to kind of really slow play this situation. You know, maybe wait till after the bye, make sure that he's not only healthy, but he's comfortable with what he's being asked to do. And then you'll see him kind of get portioned out snaps very quickly or very slowly as he kind of gets his feet wet in the defense.
Well, and that's the other thing is who's he playing over? Because assuming you have a healthy Trayvon Diggs, you're going to have Bridges, I think is going to be one of their starting outside corners for maybe the foreseeable future. You've got Bland in the slot. You've got Kyer Elam. You activated Kalen Carson last week. Josh Butler is going to be coming soon. Like, I think there's a chance that Ravel gets activated, but he's one of the guys that's a quote unquote healthy scratch for the, for maybe a month or so and kind of slowly works his way out of the field.
Well, once you trade Trayvon Diggs for Maxx Crosby, I mean, you saw the problem kind of solves itself, doesn't it, Marcus?
Sure. I mean, yes, but no.
Yes, but no, you're right. I listen, I think it's got to be, one of the guys, Bridges or Elam, that I think that'll probably take the hit there just because they got to see what they've got in this guy. They want to get him out there and get him some opportunity. I mean, I don't know what his plan is for like goals for 2025, but I know that at the very least, you want him getting out there and getting significant snaps before the season's over, so that you can kind of get him, acclimated so that he's ready to maybe compete for a starting role in 2026.
And one last player who had his 21-day window activated, and that's Cooper Beebe, the Cowboys starting center. Again, not likely to play this week against Denver. It sounds like they're going to be slow playing this as well. And one of the reasons they could do that is because Brock Hoffman has played pretty well at center in his replacement. I think, like the rest of these guys, after the bye is likely when we'll see BB again.
Yeah, BB's the one guy in this whole group that has a lot of luxury, to be honest, because the backup situation is so strong, because he's already played this season, and the injury wasn't as severe as some of these other guys. I think, his is going to be the kind of the most graceful return to play. But I agree, it's not likely to be this week. I would imagine it's next week. You'll or at least next week is when you'll actually see him starting to compete to try to get into practice. The game, we'll see.
Because they have this looming bye week coming up. I think it's in week 10. You've got the Denver game, and then you've got the Cardinal game, which I believe is on Monday Night Football. You probably, if it's close, you probably hold these guys, give them the extra, 13 days to get ready for that Raider game. Because again, after this bye week, they've got a bunch of games in a row. That's that vaunted 3 games in 13 days or something like that. If they can keep these guys as healthy as possible going into that stretch, it's probably the best path forward. I want to talk about the vibes in Dallas right now. I know coming off a big division win, the vibes are always going to be good. But overall, something feels a little different this year. We'll try to quantify that next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your favorite team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's all incredibly frustrating, but that is why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price that you pay, the price that you see is the price that you pay. I love Game Time because you're going to see exactly what the view looks like from your seats in the app before you buy. And honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I've purchased tickets in the past. So go download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And Landon, I want to talk about something that's really hard to discuss. That's vibes, right? Because there's no data, there's no spreadsheet, there's no all 22 clip from the film that we can break down. But we watch the sounds from the sideline that the Dallas Cowboys produce every time they win a game or they tie a game, which is fun. And if you watch these over the years, you can kind of get a good sense of where the team is at, kind of together. And this team, even though they might not be a playoff contender or Super Bowl contender or whatever you want to say, it just feels a little different from previous years in a good way.
Yeah, and it's funny you said that we don't have any tape on it. I was going to say, well, we do have the sounds from the sideline, which is about as close as you can get, right? I think it's something that we've talked about in OTAs and minicamp, and then eventually when I showed up in training camp, it was a very real thing, and that again, like any of us who have kids of a certain age, we've heard vibes talked about quite a bit, right? You understand what vibe means, and I think that it's a real thing, even if it's not a quantifiable thing, right? Like you go into these practices, you feel it, you see that, there's music in all these practices, but not everyone's always dancing, right? Like, there's always positivity, it feels like, but not everyone's always buying in. And I think that was the difference, is that it feels like the buy-in from this team is 100%, right? Like it doesn't, like there isn't the kind of too cool for school kid. It's just everybody's kind of on the same page about being excited about going out and trying to win football games, and about going out and having fun. And we talked about it in training camp, like how long does this last, right? How does this last when the Cowboys get punched in the mouth, right? When the Cowboys lose a tough game, right? And the Cowboys have had both.
They lost a tough game last week, right?
That's right. They've gotten punched in the mouth several times, and I think this sort of vibe, as we've labeled it, has prevailed, right? And to Brian Schottenheimer's credit, he is remaining the same guy that he was, despite wins or losses or successes or losses. So I don't know. I mean, again, another week goes by, and the more I buy into the fact that it feels like this locker room has changed, and I feel like Brian Schottenheimer is a major part of why that is.
So I think there could be a lot of different explanations, right? I think Schotty's obviously one. Going from Mike McCarthy to Brian Schottenheimer, I think that makes a big difference. And that's not to say that Schottenheimer is a better or worse coach than Mike McCarthy. They're just very different, right? I think there's also a factor here that they are incredibly young. I believe they are the third youngest team in the NFL. They were going into week one. And your oldest player is like your quarterback and your kicker and your long snapper and your punter, right? Like that's where all your ages is coming at the team. Yeah. We talked about on the offense, like outside of Dak, I believe the next oldest starter is Terrence Steele at like,
it's got to be Terrence, right?
27 years old, 28 years old. And defense is incredibly young as well. So I think that's playing a factor. I also think for the first time in a long time, Landon, this is really Dak Prescott's team. And not to say it wasn't in previous years, but there's no DeMarcus Ware. There's no Zach Martin. There's no Micah Parsons. And having one singular leader that is kind of the heartbeat of your team and having it be Dak, I do think it's a good thing for this Cowboys team.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think Dak is one of the things that makes Dak special is who he is, right? And how he leads. And I think it's been something that has been clear and apparent about him since, the second year he was the starter, or the first year that he was the full-time starter, right? Is that he was able to kind of not only go in there as a rookie and command an offense and take over an offense from a very successful Tony Romo, but even when Romo was back, it felt like the team wanted to keep going with Dak. And I think that's not just because Dak was playing good football. I think that's partially because who he is and the confidence he instills around people. Dak's a special guy. Like, I think that we could all say that, like, he's a special person. He understands how to connect with folks. He understands, like, how to motivate folks. He understands the psychology of all this. And I think that, clearing out even more runway for him to be the kind of leader and the person, leading the charge here, and trying to line up everyone behind him. I think, it's good for the team. And again, I think, his relationship with Schottenheimer too is also what's helping this. There's a lot of unified direction.
Yes.
I think that's been an issue with this, organization as well, is that it hasn't always felt like all the different components are always on the same page and facing in the same direction. And I think having Dak and Shotty kind of aligned on things really helps to get everybody else in line and kind of looking in the same direction. So, yeah, I do think that that's a big portion of it, is that, it's very clear who the leaders are on this team. There's a lot of buy-in from the folks that aren't the leaders. And I think there's a lot of trust with the kind of, younger and middle class of this team, that the folks kind of situated above them, whether that's, the quarterback or the offensive coordinator or the head coach, that they all are kind of in agreement of how they're supposed to be doing things. Even on defense, right? Even on defense, when there was, like, when things weren't looking good, you see Shotty go over to the other side. They make the changes that are necessary. And right as we were worried about, like, potentially Eberflus losing that locker room a little bit, you see them kind of make the adjustments, or at least start to make some adjustments that you hope will help, kind of get some more buy-in by the defense. So I just really love the way that they've handled kind of their players and understanding the kind of psychology that's required by this younger generation to kind of motivate them and get them going the way you want them to.
And that's a very, level-headed take. Can I recklessly speculate
Yes,
for a minute?
please.
I think the Cowboys would be a much better team, and I think they could be like a legit playoff contender if they had Micah Parsons right now. Just saying that at the front.
Oh boy.
But I do wonder if some of the reason that they ended up trading Micah had nothing to do with the contract, and it had nothing to do with the player. I think, and we heard this from DeMarcus Lawrence last year and from other reports that came out, is that he can be a little draining on the organization. And I don't think he was doing it on purpose. I think sometimes that's just Micah Parsons' personality. It comes through that way. And when you have a guy that's as dominant and as elite as Micah, that can kind of bleed through the rest of the roster a little bit. And honestly, from everything we've heard in Green Bay, that's not happening. And maybe it's a Pickens situation where sometimes you get to a different situation and a different team, and you vibe better in that locker room. So I'm not putting the blame on Micah. I wouldn't be surprised if it's significantly better in Green Bay. But I do wonder with what it was like in training camp and in preseason, with him laying down on the training table, and that's all anybody was talking about was Micah's contract and all this kind of stuff and who's the leader and all. I wonder if for a lot of these players, it's just a big sigh of relief that he's gone, and now they can just focus on football.
I will say this. I think you and I separately have heard from different sources that there have been a certain amount of, like, deep exhalation when this whole thing was done. And I think the most shocking thing that we got out of the Micah Parsons trade immediately was there wasn't a revolt or a mutiny in the locker room when this happened. So
You didn't even really see players go on social media and, like, saying how awful it was. I mean, the one guy that seemed really, really, really bummed about it is Trayvon Diggs, right? And I think, again, just reading the tea leaves on all this situation, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys are thinking about moving on from Diggs, because they wonder if they're feeling a similar draw of energy from Diggs over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's interesting, right? Because both of those guys were out during training camp. They got a real life look at like what it was like to be without those guys, kind of personality wise. And look, I mean, the talent difference is, obviously noticeable. We would be
Oh,
a better
100%.
football team with Micah Parsons. There's no way around it. But maybe they were willing to give that up in order to kind of find another way because they felt like, again, not necessarily a smart trade, but it's part of the formula as to why you
Yeah.
would do this in the first place, right?
All right, let's talk about some trade candidates now that Maxx Crosby is apparently off the market. Who could potentially replace Micah Parsons on that defensive line? We'll get to that next.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it gives you so many different ways that you can bet on the game. Like, I love money line parlays. I like to put together 2 or 3 teams that I think are going to win on a Sunday. It gives me somebody else that I can root for outside of my Dallas Cowboys. And it makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. And whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com and download the FanDuel app today and get started. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, 2 shows every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Landon, we got some rumors coming out on Tuesday that maybe the Cowboys were interested in Maxx Crosby. In about 6 hours, that got shut down by Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero. They're saying that the Raiders are not trading Maxx Crosby. We'll see in 2 weeks when they're like 2-6. Just wait it out. But if it's not Maxx Crosby, who could the Cowboys go out and get to improve their chances this year?
Yeah, when they say it's not, don't trade for Maxx Crosby, we're not trading for Maxx Crosby, I just hear we're raising the price on Maxx Crosby. That's what I hear. Yeah, I mean, look, I think there are a lot of guys out there that are actually available that we've heard. And again, not that situation is completely dead because I wouldn't rule that out quite yet. But I do think that, as far as guys that are, it sounds like being actively shopped without denials. Yeah, it sounds like there are a couple different guys and a couple of different guys at positions that the Cowboys have some interest in, right? I think there's 2 teams really that seemingly have several of these players, right? Where they're either dealing with coaching staffs that are on their way out, with GMs that are potentially also on their way out, or new coaching staffs that, despite their lack of success, probably are still getting the opportunity to kind of reshape the roster a little bit if they want. And I'm talking about the Dolphins and the Jets, right?
Yeah.
And I think that each one has a couple different players that you may be interested in, not at the level of Maxx Crosby potentially, but as a trade for a young player that maybe you'd like to develop, just adding talent to your roster. Look, both Jalen Phillips and I think Jermaine Johnson kind of fall under that category of late first round pick defensive ends who were, either drafted by the previous administration or have kind of, gotten to a point where they've fallen out of favor. I think both of these guys kind of qualify as an upgrade, or at least an additional part of the rotation to what you've got. And I think, gives you another, a guy that you could replace Sam Williams with, basically, right? Take his snaps and kind of, replace them with this guy. And I think that, each of them are probably going to have different price tags, but they're probably not going to cost you a first round pick, right? It's probably going to be second or third round picks for those younger guys. And then there's also some other guys too, but I think that, both the Jets and the Dolphins, to me, seem like they're teams that have quite a bit of guys to kind of, be available for the Cowboys.
Well, I think first of all, you've got to identify what are the positions of need. And to me, honestly, it's defensive end, corner, safety, and maybe linebacker, right? I think if you could grab another linebacker like a Demario Davis, who we mentioned before, for a late round pick, I think that makes some sense as well. I think it's also, are you looking for short-term rentals? Are you looking for guys that could be here for the next several years? Like I look at someone like Calais Campbell. I think Calais Campbell's 39 right now on a 2-5 Arizona team. Could you flip a 7th round pick for Calais Campbell and improve your run defense and have him be, your strong side defensive end? And that way you can use, Ezra Raku and James Houston and Fowler some more. I would be open to making some of those short-term moves. I just don't know if there's a guy out there right now that's outside of like Maxx Crosby that's going to help you in the short term and the long term. It just, I can't quite find that name that kind of serves both masters there.
Yeah. I mean, the guy that, it's too bad that you couldn't have a little more confidence in someone like Bradley Chubb, right? Chubbs has 4 sacks already this year, but you watch him play and it's not exactly inspiring, explosion coming from him. He's only 29 years old, so he's kind of right in the prime of where his career should be, but he's a 29-year-old with 3 knee injuries at this point, on each knee. So there are guys like that like, man, if you could strike gold. And listen, I'm not ruling out the fact that the Cowboys trade for a guy like Chubb and Chubb breaks out but it's just, there's so much uncertainty, right? And I think the same thing with everyone else. It's like everyone else, it's just unproven guys, right? And it's like, do you think the change of scenery is going to help with unproven guys? I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case.
Well, I do have one name that I'll mention, because what you want to try to find is teams that are either out of it, have new head coaches, like new regimes, or new GMs, or all three. And that's where the Tennessee Titans come in. Yeah. They've already said they're not trading Jeffrey Simmons. What about T'Vondre Sweat, who they drafted in the 2nd round last year, who played really well for them as a rookie? Now, maybe they wouldn't want to give up a second round pick that's playing well at defensive tackle. But if a team like Dallas offered a 2nd round pick, maybe that would be interesting. And if you added T'Vondre Sweat, a guy that can really stop the run with Osa Odighizuwa, with Kenny Clark, with Solomon Thomas, now you've got the makings of a pretty good defensive line that can stop the run and get after the passer.
It's so funny that like all these defensive tackles are now available for trade. Like, we have 2 good ones, and we actually have 3 decent ones. Yeah. And so it's like now that we have all this defensive tackle depth, all these guys are available. But listen, I'm not against it. Like, again, any kind of addition, like as long as he can give you some sort of immediate help on some aspect of your defense and potentially be a long-term piece, I think I would be on board for it if the price is right.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Follow us on YouTube. Check out the channel wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Let us know which guys you would like to see the Cowboys go after and trade for. Don't be realistic. Don't tell me Myles Garrett and Maxx Crosby or Micah Parsons. Like, I've already seen those in my mentions. Don't do that. So let us know who you want the Cowboys to trade for. We've got a crossover show coming on Thursday with the Locked On Broncos guys. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.